story began in 1970, in the spring of 1970, when Jerry Guarneri, who was the principal founder of the company, and a young man named John Levecki, who was one of my former students, showed up in my living room, Pennington Road, and asked if I would assist them in their production, by a new company. They were just starting out, and they named their company Shakespeare 70 because that was a very popular thing back in the 70s. But very few of you remember the 70s. I do, because I was the 1870s, and then the 1970s. And remember, this is their first ever production. It was going to be staged out in Washington Crossing Park, where the summer season at that point was two shows. A musical by the group called the Pennington Players, and then secondly, Shakespeare 70. And they had decided that the show was going to be, of all things, Hamlet. Quite a big bite for a new company, but John Levecki was an extraordinary student and actually an extraordinary actor as well. He was programmed to play Hamlet, and then we were going to hold auditions, and people were going to come, and we would. I said, well, what do you want of me? What can I do to help? And they said, someone had to be protector of the bard. They said, we can produce, we can act, but we want to be sure we don't do any harm to Shakespeare. So that was my program title, and I want to share with you a couple of moments when, in fact, the bard might have needed some protection. I don't know if it was the first rehearsal I went to, but it was early on. Being a new company and without any extraordinary connections, we had to cast people who came to auditions. Unlike the cast that came to audition for Comedy of Errors, these wonderful people who sit right here in front of me, and we had no idea. So, it was okay. We had Hamlet. A couple of really experienced people showed up to play the king and Gertrude, and we were doing okay. Then you get down to the people who are, in the smaller supporting roles. And there was this one fellow, I was told that he was a veteran of local opera productions, but he didn't sing. He was just one of those guys in the back row with a spear. It was uncertain what he could do. He was playing one of the guards. The two fellows who opened one of the great plays in all of theater history, right? So you remember that the show opens with a question: who's there? And the response is,
"Hey, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself."
Thank you very much. That's right, right? Our friend, this was rehearsal now. Our friend heard his cue, and he said, and I quote, "Stand and expose yourself." I didn't make that up. You can't make that up. The next year we did 12th Night, and the guy we had playing Toby Belch was a terrific actor with one notable flaw. He he didn't like learning lines. So it was touch and go sometimes whether he would. I mean, he always showed up and all that, but the touch and go whether he would get it right. He went up on a line at one point when he's out with Feste and Surrender Reguchi, and invented one of the great ad-libs that I've ever heard. He was supposed to be turning over a coin, and he said, he forgot his line, and he said, "Oh, just give him an ios thou." I didn't make that up either, but he did. Then there was Antony and Cleopatra. 28 people in that cast. Tough going, about 140 scenes. And there we were one night, maybe this was second week, and we were getting ready. It was early on, and one of the people, we were still out in the park, by the way, one of the people who worked for the parks group, the people who supported us there, came down, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you the director?" Yes. Well, it was back in the old days before anybody had one of these, anybody had a phone of any kind that they could carry on, away from their house. So there was one phone in the box office, and he said, "Well, we just got a call. Do you have a Mr. Smith in your cast?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, Mr. Smith called to say he can't make it tonight." And this was not, I thought, okay, they were always funny. They were always kidding. I said, "Oh yeah, he's gonna come out from behind a tree," and Mr. Smith couldn't make it. Mr. Smith had his car break down somewhere on 295 south of here. Mr. Smith was playing the Egyptian Mardian, and he was accustomed to putting on his makeup at home so that he was ready. So Mr. Smith also weighed about 275 pounds. Was a great big man, and there he was, side level, pulled over to the side on 295, and stopped, the car wouldn't go, and who showed up but the police? And now he had to convince them that, first of all, that his car was legitimately stopped, and secondly, that he was not some person who had escaped from an institution. But Mr. Smith never made it to the theater that night. So what do you do in that case? We had two actors, one of whom had no lines, no scene in the first act, and one of whom had no lines or scene in the second act. We handed him the book and said, I'll go out in my curtain speech and tell them, don't worry, the show must go on, and that's how it's going to go. And then one of those two actors was my son Chris, who was, I don't know, how old was he, John?
15.
Yeah. Chris took the book, went over, sat down under a tree, and went on and did the lines without the book.
Wow.
I wish Chris were here today to share in that story, but I'm sorry, but he couldn't make it. I got one more. It was The Tempest. Some of you may have been in this. Celeste, are you here?
I am.
Yes. Celeste was in this. John was in this. The woman playing Ariel had the last speech in the first act, and then she was supposed to playing Aerial the Fairy. You know, she was supposed to skip off the stage, and the curtain came down, and everybody would go applaud. So now she did her line, she left the stage, and I was standing there, and one of the actors came out and said, you better come in the back to the dressing room because Kay had an injury. I said, well, what happened? I said, well, she may have broken her ankle. And the poor woman's ankle was about this big, all blown up. So this gave me the opportunity for one of the great moments. Joe Carney, who isn't here, right? Joe? No? Joe Carney's kids were in that film. And I knew that her husband was in the house that night. So I went up to the top of the hill, you remember the hill out of Washington Crossing, and to the freshman stand where Sandy Carney was standing, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and this was a great moment. I said, is there a doctor in the house? he was a doctor. Not my kind of doctor, the real kind. He came out and he said, you know, that looks like a really bad injury. I wouldn't walk on it. So what we did was we carried her out. I had two big studs in that. And they carried her out, put her on a chair upstage, and Celeste did all of the aerial movements while the other young woman recited the lines. It worked. The audience, of course, we had to tell them what was going to happen, and they were very pleased with what we did with that, and so were we. So enough with stories, I guess. I wrote this little essay here. Actually, it's a big essay. I wrote this over time, and so you can see it's all over the place. And, I got to try to remember how I planned to put it together when I actually had to say the words to all of you. But here goes. As this is my last time in the director's chair, I wanted to pay tribute to every single actor who joined me in performing the glorious works of our friend Will Shakespeare. And that goes for a whole bunch of people who are in this room right now. And I can only say thank you so much for all the good things that you did on all those stages for all these years. We began, as I said, in 1970 on the gravel stage at Washington Crossing Park when John Levesque played Hamlet, and it's been just a terrific run for me since then. I'll find it. I particularly want to pay tribute and say thank you to the cast of Comedy of Errors. I want you all to know that you have made my last show and my last time as a director a fun experience and a very easy ride. Your patience, your goodwill, and your ever-present energy, which all of you saw this afternoon, made rehearsal an actual excitement for me every single night. Thank you all. I just can't name all the actors who are in this room, but if I could, I'll tell you what. Would anyone who has acted in a Shakespeare 70 play please stand up? thanks. Janet and Dale. Janet has been at my side for at least the last 10 years and maybe more, with endless support for so many aspects of production. Dale's approach, his creative approach to set design and building, has been an artistic highlight for more than 20 years. Dale came to the company in 1990 as an actor. Another fella came along with him that night, George Hartpence. I don't know how many years it was, Dale, before one day you said, "Hey, could I design a set?" and I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And that's how Dale became the principal genius behind all those beautiful sets that you have seen over all this time, and the remarkable one that we just played on. It was a fortunate evening that day when George and Dale showed up at Showcase to audition for Merchant of Venice, where they played Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
I still don't remember. Who was Melania?
They don't remember.
I never knew which one they were. Truth to tell, I'm not sure they did. My partnerships with Dale and Janet is a gift I will never forget. Next, I want everybody to know and to understand the selfless staff and members, staff and crew members who have provided the support that we needed to be able to produce our work. The company, I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing. The company got going in the first place because of the vision of Jerry Guarnieri, who had the fortitude enough to say, we're going to try this, we're going to do it, and he was a high motivation for so many years before he passed. But over many years, I have been particularly blessed by the organizational skills of three great ladies of the theater who have been my stage managers, and they're Danny Kennedy. Where are you, Danny? Danny was our substitute nun today. Nikki DiCamillo. And Lily Timmons. The company is now managed by an active and creative board of directors whom I respect and thank. Janet Corderone. The aforementioned Lily Timmons. Culinary genius Kurt Fox. Matt Trail. Jake Burbage. Jake is over here hiding in the corner. Hannah Rappaport Stein. Dustin. And Chris Luce. Chris was up in the booth today making the sounds sound like they were supposed to. Not to leave out our business manager, my dear friend, Tom Kerberstein. No man can pursue an avocation like the theater without the support of his family. There could be no better than mine. My sons grew up in the company. They played lots of different parts. Chris will complain if he were here, he would say, I never gave him any good parts. John, you wouldn't say that, right?
No, not for a minute.
Sometimes they moved sets, they schlepped costumes, they painted, and sometimes they just listened to my tales of woe. I can't tell you how much I owe to my sons, and I love you boys. And speaking of love, I have shared all of these 57 years with my wife, Gail. She has given me whatever I needed to be able to continue this work. Sometimes it was a sympathetic ear or maybe a cogent suggestion. For many years, she sat behind her sewing machine and produced endless numbers of costumes, including those 28 people in Anthony and Keith, while she pursued a full-time profession in nursing. She's always been there. I love you, babes. So on Monday, it's off to Maine, where I'll continue to Zoom with the board. And I just want to say again, thank you all for coming to this celebration. Thank you to the willing hands of those who prepared and produced the food that we have here. And I leave you with something from Shakespeare, from, I think, one of his most poignant works. You know, I retired once before. And this is the last thing I ever said in a classroom. This is Prospero speaking from The Tempest. The elves of hills, brooks, standing lakes and graves, and ye that on the sands with point printless feet do chase the ebbing Neptune, and do fly when he comes back. I need my book. You demi-puppets that by moonshine do the green sour ringlets make, whereof the yew not bites, and you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrooms that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew, by whose aid, weak masters though we be, I have bedimmed the noontide sun, called forth the mutinous winds, and twixt the green sea and the azured vaults set roaring war. To the dread rattling thunder have I given fire, and rifted Jove's stout oak with his own bolt. The strong base promontory have I made shake, and the spurs plucked up the pine and cedar. Graves at my command have waked their sleepers, oaked and led them forth by my so potent art. But this rough magic I here abjure, and when I have required some heavenly music, which even now I do, to work mine end upon their senses that the airy charm is for, I'll break my staff, bury at certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than ever did plummet sound, I'll drown my book. Thank you so much. And now, what's on the program, Kurt? We can sing it.
Let's eat.
Let's see.